Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Yankee and Canuck podcast, Best Picture Winner Series, where we review the Best Picture winners from 1927 to the present.
And I'm your host, a Yankee.
And I'm your host, a Canuck.
And today we're going to be talking about Grand Hotel. This is the fifth Best Picture winner. Curiously, it is the only Best Picture winner in this category that won without being nominated for anything else. Based on a 1929 novel, which was then made into a play, which was then made into this film, which was eventually remade twice, and it was also made into a musical that came out in 1989. So there are a lot of different permutations of this work. And also, it's notable for a famous line, "I Want to Be Alone," which is said by Greta Garbo. It is famous for the fact that it is an ensemble cast: John Barrymore, Lionel Barrymore, Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford. It's an MGM production, a lot of melodrama, as you would expect.
Yeah, the plot is simple. We follow a few guests in a luxurious Berlin hotel, their jobs, their lives, and their faults. The guests are a ballerina, a baron, a stenographer, an industrialist, a disgruntled employee, and a doctor. And there's been a lot of movies similar to this since its release.
Yeah, I think the most famous example I can think of is Ocean's 11, the original one with the Rat Pack, and the remake with Steven Soderbergh's remake.
The hotel itself, grand? Yes, indeed. The movie, not so much. It's a very dated film. I honestly didn't really like it that much. That being said, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. If it had a stronger plot that connected more with the guests at the hotel, I think that would have been cool. But I'm not sure what they would have done. Maybe a murder or some sort of mystery, but at this time, nothing like that was done. And there's been plenty of movies like that since then. I hate to complain too much about it because the movie is 92 years old, but gotta be honest. As I said earlier, the plot is simple, but it does work in a way. It just isn't that good.
I'm going to be honest, man. After we got done with Cinema Bun, Cimarron, that whole thing, I was immediately already on the next book, which was this one. So I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and start with the book first instead of seeing the movie right away. So I read the first 50 pages of the thing, and by the time I got to page 50, I was like, what the fuck did I just read? I could not retain anything that I just read. I just knew very generally that there are these rich people in this hotel. They got their different woes and all this angst about their careers, or they're not as rich as they want to be, and one dude has terminal cancer or something. And I was just like, this is just a mishmash of a bunch of like jibber jabber nonsense. What the was this? So I was very scared. I was like, this is not a good start for this overall thing. I kept reading, and then I kept reading, and then I finally got to the end of the book. And by the end of the book, I learned fucking nothing. Nothing substantial about this thing. Nothing about the characters. There's a couple of excerpts that are kind of interesting, but that's because they deal with death. And I thought, okay, that's very insightful and interesting. Beyond that, the book is terrible. I was like, what? Let's watch the movie.
Tell us how you really feel.
I know, right? But then I decided to watch the movie. I was like, okay, maybe this is like a Forrest Gump situation where the book is terrible, but the movie improves on it like immensely, right?
Yeah.
Then I started to watch the film. No. It started out okay. And I was like, okay, this is an ensemble film. I get that. Famous Hollywood stars of the era. I don't mind ensemble films with an interweaving plot thread line and different things happening, and everyone's got their own happening, you know? Now, the book was terrible in the characterization, but I thought, well, in this movie, hopefully it's better because you got good actors. Hopefully you have like great set design and all this other stuff, right? No. The movie kept going and going and going, and I was waiting for it to start. It never started. I was just watching the most boring play in the world. All I got by the end of the damn film was that there's a character called Felix, which I think is the Baron. He's trying to steal Greta Garbo's pearls, but then he changes his mind because he just was like, hey, I want to get laid. That's his whole thing. And then Greta Garbo, as soon as she sees him, she's like, oh my God, why are you in my room? Oh, you want to do something? And then they have this talk, and then Greta Garbo has this famous line, "I want to be alone." Somehow that's like a famous line in this thing. And I don't know why. She says that, I think, twice. And I remember going back, I'm like, because I remember hearing it, I think, but it didn't resonate with me at all. And then I went back and I saw the scene again. I'm like, oh, I guess she does say the line, but it's like, whatever. And I think that line is only noteworthy because Greta Garbo eventually became a hermit. She just said, F Hollywood, F being the public. I don't want anything to do with this. I just want to be a recluse for the rest of my life. And she did until she died in 1990. And people attributed that line to her because her character said it. And they're like, oh, Greta Garbo really just took this shit seriously. And then there's that sick guy. He's like, drunk and lonely. He just sporadically appears in the film from time to time.
From the line, I think.
Yeah, he's like the Lionel Barrymore character, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And then there's this businessman, that son of a the worst fucking character in the entire film because it's so boring. In the book, it's horrifically boring. It's like you were to get like a spreadsheet of stocks and you're reading it.
Yeah.
That's how his chapters read. By the end, the only other real noteworthy thing about this film is how the thing ends. And it ends with this line: Grand Hotel, always the same. People come, people go. Nothing ever happens. By the time they said nothing ever happens, which is like the literal last line of the film, I was so pissed off. Because that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like nothing ever happened in this film. Nothing happened in the book. Nothing happened in this film. And when I saw the remake, I thought maybe this is different. But when I saw that remake, which is called Weekend at the Waldorf, 30 minutes into it, I was like, is this supposed to be a comedy? And then the comedy finally started happening. I'm like, no, the comedy's terrible. It's more or less a carbon copy of the original book. It doesn't add anything substantial. The characters are just as boring. And then I thought, well, there's a musical. So I already ate 3 shit sandwiches. Why not a 4th? But surprisingly enough, the musical is actually not that bad. The music's not great. The performances are fine. But they do add a couple of interesting things in that. One is concerning a couple of bellhops, African-American guys from New Orleans. And they talk about like, yeah, we're working class, but we do the best we can here. And they have a scene with the ballerina character. And there's a bit of a rapport there. They discuss their differences, but also their similarities. And I thought, you know what, man? If there were more characters like that in the original book, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. I would have been like, okay, there's some substance here. But instead, to me, the whole thing is about a bunch of rich people that are just laying around, just doing rich people things. And if they're not rich, they're in a rich hotel and they're schmoozing with the rich people. It's just fucking boring. I felt like I had my time wasted, and I absolutely fucking hated it.
You did mention the music, the play, and the music in the remake and whatnot. But in this version, in the 1932 version, the music's pretty memorable, especially in the beginning. You got Johann Strauss, what is it called? Blue Danube. It's one of the most famous classical music pieces of all time. Heard it in a million shows and movies. I think he was referred to as the Waltz King back in the day. It was used in 2001: Space Odyssey.
I know. I know. They were playing that classical song. That's what you're referring to. Yeah, I do remember they play that periodically in the film.
Yeah. So that was actually kind of cool. There wasn't a whole lot of use of much other music except for Strauss.
Yeah, other than that song, I mean, the music is, I can't remember anything. Yeah, I mean, maybe that notable piece, but that's pretty much it. I don't know, but like the performances, I mean, given the material, I mean, like they're not awful per se. It's just like I just didn't care. I mean, Greta Garbo, she was a beautiful woman. So is Joan Crawford, but other than that, I just didn't care.
Yeah, I thought some of the acting was obviously melodramatic and over the top. I thought John Barrymore, who played the Baron, who's Drew Barrymore's grandfather, I thought he actually did a good job. And Joan Crawford, who's the stenographer, I forgot her name in the film, she also did a good job, a decent job in their performances, all in all. I personally didn't think Greta Garbo's performance was good at all. I found it actually kind of annoying and way too over the top. Maybe more for like a play or theater performance, and same with some of the other acting.
Well,
there was a dog in the movie. I think it was a dachshund. That was the best part of the movie. It was a pretty adorable dog. It was the Baron's dog, and I hope the dog enjoyed itself while he was filming that movie. I'd be really upset to find out that dog, years later, joined the Nazi party.
Yeah,
That'd be heartbreaking.
In terms of the book gaining prominence and the film gaining prominence, because the book was very successful, as was the film. And so having consumed both things, I was like, why the hell was this thing even popular in the first place? I didn't understand it. The Great Depression was still going on. So people were like turning to anything to distract themselves with the fact that they can't pay for anything. They couldn't pay for food. It was hard to get a job. So I can only guess that the reason why this book caught on was because people were like rich people doing rich people things. They eat caviar. There's a section in the book where they describe eating caviar and So if anything, it was a form of escapism, I think. I think they just wanted to pretend that they were living the high roller, high baller lifestyle, even though their own situation is very destitute and depressing.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, that may be the case for a lot of films at that time in general. And then, like you said, it's still only a few years since talkies have been going on, and so it's just such a big difference from the silent films people were used to. And so I think a lot of this is just really fresh, and so everyone's probably really excited, people that are into the arts and film and whatnot. So, and then like you said earlier, the ensemble cast, I think, plays a big part in the film's popularity.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt about that. So.
Well, the film, yeah, that makes a little more sense. And as a matter of fact, I mean, that may have played one of the many parts as to why I won Best Picture in the first place. Because getting into the whole Academy Awards situation, the whole thing was a little unusual. It's the 5th Academy Awards ceremony. They're still trying to figure their shit out. Because the way it was structured, there were certain films that were up for different kinds of categories that suspiciously, in my opinion, Grand Hotel was just actually one of, I believe, 4 films that were only nominated for Best Picture and nothing else. The other 3 being The Smiling Lieutenant, 1 Hour with You, and 5 Star Final, which starred Edward G. Robinson. So
That's a bit strange, right? That's kind of unusual. Usually there's at least 1 or 2 other things they're nominated for, whether it's director or writing or something.
Yeah. You would think, right? At least one other thing. But they were still trying to figure out how this thing was going to work. And it just seemed to me that everyone had their favorites for the night. Like, for instance, the Best Actor category, the actor Wallace Beery, who's actually in Grand Hotel, is one of the characters. I forget which character he plays. He's not one of the main characters, but he was one of the ones. I think he's the guy who killed John. Spoiler. He's the guy who killed John Barrymore's character.
Well, that's a major character because that's the industrialist precinct.
Yeah, well, I guess you could say, but he's part of the main cast, so I guess you could say, yeah, he is. Yeah, but he actually played a character called Champ in the movie The Champ. And what was unusual, too, with that particular award, Best Actor, is that not only did he win Best Actor award, Frederick March won Best Actor as well. Guess what he won the award for?
No idea.
You mentioned this film in the last episode in Cimarron.
I don't remember.
He won for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh, okay.
This is actually one of the few horror films that actually won an Oscar. Yeah, playing the character Dr. Jekyll and Edward Hyde.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. In 31, actually, not 32.
In the 32 award ceremony, because it was at a deadlock tie, they decided to split the award and share it. They had their own awards, but they shared the honor of winning Best Actor, which was an interesting, unusual event. That just goes to show you how disorganized this whole event was in the first place. Which is why, if that were to happen, a film had a pretty good chance of winning and having not been nominated for other categories. But another big reason why this film also won was, guess who was the studio that produced this thing?
MGM.
Yep, exactly. It wasn't
Dun,
Louis...
dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. It wasn't Louis B. Mayer, per se, that helped win this film. Perhaps he had some sort of a hand. But it turns out there was a producer. He's the guy who got the book. He read the book. He liked the book, got the whole thing together. He was the one who mandated all the sets look extravagant and was responsible for the star-studded cast. His name was Irving Thalberg. He produced Broadway Melody.
Oh, okay.
He produced other films that were not complete dog. But, he was a very powerful producer, very influential. He had a stranglehold on the whole industry at that time, especially being aligned with MGM. So when you have a powerhouse studio and a very powerful producer, of course a fucking piece of crap like Broadway Melody and this film would eventually win Best Picture. So it's all coming together. Now, unfortunately, this guy would die from pneumonia at the age of 37, I believe. So his reign of terror, in my opinion, would be over. But he was instrumental for this film winning. All these circumstances surrounding the Academy Awards, all those things help culminate to why this is the most unusual Best Picture winner. And in my opinion, the worst one thus far. I don't know if there's any other worse ones. There could be from here on out. I've been surprised already. But as of right now...
We'll find out soon enough.
Oh, God, yes. But as of right now, this is my fucking worst Best Picture winner, hands down.
Ooh, it's a tough one, man. Yeah, this one might be my least favorite. I don't know, Broadway wasn't good, and I didn't really enjoy Cimarron that much. I don't know. I think there was elements of this movie that could have been done better. I liked some of the characters maybe were interesting enough. They just didn't really go into enough detail or connect the things like I said earlier. For example, with the Baron, I don't think he's even a Baron. It's just a front because he's a criminal and he's a jewel thief, obviously. And you see one of his associates who's blackmailing him or he owes money to.
Yeah.
So I think they could have gone into some other dynamics, but then again, it would make the movie a totally different movie, and it would probably take away from some of the other characters. So
I mean, that whole story arc was it was creepy, man. Dude's gonna steal like these pearls or whatever from this woman, this ballerina who's like disgraced and her career's in the shitter. And he's just like in the shadows, like, he's really hot. I'm gonna show myself and I'm gonna proclaim my love for her. And then the Greta Garbo character is just like, oh, why? Why are you there? Come closer. It's like this dude could fucking like do all kinds of terrible things to you and kill you and throw you out the balcony. But you just welcome it. It's supposed to be like this pseudo love. It's like this love story or something. And I'm like, this is too creepy, bro. What the?
It's definitely very strange, very bizarre. There's a little bit more to it though, because the reason why he steals the pearls and he's hiding to try to escape, and but he hears her talking to herself, and she's on the phone, I think, first, and then and she's not doing well because, like you said, her career is tanking, and there's not many people in the audience anymore for her,
Yeah.
and she suffers from like depression and all these things. So he hears her saying something like she's gonna kill herself, and that's what makes him get out of the shadows and like go, hey, and talk to her and stuff like that. It's weird because he's in there stealing, he's robbing her, and so that's how that whole thing comes about because he overhears her talking while he's hiding and trying to escape. And then it just goes on from there. By the end of the movie, they're basically going to go somewhere. But unfortunately, it's too late because the Baron ends up getting murdered by the industrialist because he's trying to steal from him too. It shows there's a little bit of
he's got a real
a code.
kleptomaniac problem.
Yeah, but he has a code too because he became friends with, I think his name was Kleinenberg, and he was the guy, the worker of the industrialist who only had a few weeks to live. He was, I think, I don't know if he had cancer or whatnot, but
In the book, it's not
in
explicitly
the movie,
stated.
it's not specified.
It's not in the book it's a little more detailed, and there's some details that led to believe that it's probably some sort of form of intestinal cancer or stomach cancer, something like that.
Yeah. So basically, they become friends, and there's a high stake poker game or blackjack game that occurs, and Kringenberg or whatever his name is, Kringling or whatever, he drops his wallet. He's wasted. He's drunk, and he drops his wallet. And the Baron is actually like, "Ooh, this is like 15,000 marks in here. This is great for my debts." He changes his mind though and returns the wallet to him because he kind of has a code. He's like, this guy, I'm not going to do this. I'll find another way to get the money to the people I owe. So he robs the Baron. The Baron rather goes at the end to rob the industrialist, who's a bully and terrible human being, and gets caught. And then there's a little scuffle, and essentially the industrialist bludgeons the Baron to death. He pummels him with the phone, and he's like, "Oh, what have I done?" And gets arrested, and that's how the movie ends. And
yeah,
so it's very interesting how in the beginning of the film and at the end it's where the doctor is the one who says people come, people go at the Grand Hotel, but nothing really happens.
Yeah.
Well, except that one time when some dude got bludgeoned, man. That one time someone got murdered. Something did happen, man.
Yeah, the most boring murder I've ever seen on celluloid. Yeah, I could argue that nothing happened. Oh, some guy died because he was trying to steal. Oh, okay, whatever. Who cares? Might as well nothing ever happened in that hotel.
I suppose so.
It's just like I just felt like I was sleepwalking the entire film, just watching. I was like, something happened.
It's definitely very boring at times.
All times, in my opinion.
There were some parts I got into it because when there's a little bit of character development, so I'm like, okay, this might be going somewhere, and then most of it drops off and it doesn't, and it just keeps going on and on. And
that's what I'm saying.
The end, the murder was interesting. That was kind of like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that.
I didn't care.
But even then, after the murder took place, towards the end of the movie feels like it's going on for another 30 minutes. It's not. It's like 10 minutes, and then the movie ends. But it feels like 20, 30 minutes. And that's part of the problem with this film.
Yeah, the pacing really sucks, but that's because the story sucks and the characters suck.
Yeah.
Everyone could have died. The whole hotel could have burned down, and I would still be like, And going back to the book, like, here are some choice excerpts from the book. Like, check it out. Page 165. Zinowitz had meanwhile turned his eloquence to the state of shares. And here there was plainly a snag. Saxonia, in actual fact, issued twice as much stock as Chemnitz did. Accepting this as the basis, all the preliminary negotiations for the fusion of the two concerns had reckoned 2 shares of Chemnitz as the equivalent of 1 Saxonia. Now, however, the Chemnitz shares had gone up and the Saxonia shares had gone down. Hence, the center of balance had shifted, and I can keep going, but this is the type of writing that's prevalent in the book. It's extremely boring.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good at all. I'm out.
Yeah, I kept going, unfortunately. And there's more of this.
That's on you. That's on you.
Oh yeah. Well, this is a warning to everyone. If you see ratings of this book and everyone's saying they love it, they're lying. They're lying, or they're bots, or they're elitists. Something's going on here. I had to really check. Am I reading the right fucking book? Unfortunately, I was.
The book, at least. The movie, I can see why a lot of people liked it and still do.
Yeah.
I see why.
Yeah, you have
I can see that.
you have good looking actors and they're fun to oogle at. That's pretty much it. Like I said, Greta Garbo, beautiful woman. Maybe there was no substance to her character. At least I was like, well, at least she's hot. Joan Crawford, beautiful woman. No substance to her character as far as I was aware. As a matter of fact, watching this movie, I was confused. Am I watching Greta Garbo or Joan Crawford? Because their makeup was very similar to me. I believe one had dark hair and the other one had light hair or whatever. But at times I was just like zoning out and I'm like, who am I looking at? I just didn't know anymore.
Yeah.
But I could surmise that is also why it was popular. It'd be like, ooh, Greta Garbo, ooh, John Barrymore, ooh. Just like,
Right.
whatever, man. People were as shallow then as they are now. I'll just say that. People watch things for superficial reasons. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, hell, I do it too. I'm not going to be here saying that I'm any better. No, sometimes I watch a movie being like, yeah, this is completely dumb as shit, but this person's like pretty good looking or this action scene's pretty cool. So I'll watch it on that basis.
Yeah.
But
No, that's fair.
But the only interesting things about the book, there is a funny line, I think the ballerina character, where she says, when I think of my childhood, I always smell of stable manure.
Wow.
I'm like, I've never heard a character say this before. Like,
Yep.
when I think of my childhood, I think of horse.
Oh man.
But there is an actual interesting excerpt in the book that I thought was interesting. This is, I think, the counted character who is dying.
In the movie, his name's Crinoline, I think. Crinoline.
It's the same as the book.
And he's a disgruntled employee with a few weeks to live, and he's taken all the money out of his savings and everything to enjoy his last few weeks at the Grand Hotel. And it just so happens his boss shows up to close the deal, the industrialist, and it was a complete asshole.
Well, this is page 84, explaining his perspective on death, which I thought was interesting. Sometimes again, he sat on the edge of his bed and thought of his approaching death. He thought of it hard and with horror, while his ears went cold and he blinked in anguish of heart. In spite of all, he could make nothing of it. He hoped that it would be much the same as going under chloroform, except that you came to again after chloroform and found yourself in a bad way and in agonizing pain. Blue pain, Kringeline had called it in his own mind, and also that all those familiar tortures were now to be borne beforehand, not afterwards. When he thought as far as this, he began to shudder. Yes, Kringeline actually shuddered at the thought of death, although he could form no idea of it.
Mm.
I thought that was very poignant, very interesting.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
If the whole book really relied on the bellhop characters, which didn't exist in this, it's only in the musical, but if the bellhop characters existed in this, and we focused more on this character who's dying and philosophically musing about his own death, what is death like? Is it like being under chloroform? Is it not? But I come to, like, what is life? It's kind of like, it's like, famously Hamlet, to be or not to be.
Yeah.
It's a very human thing to muse about what goes after, if there is an after. And those things add more gravitas. It adds more intrigue, in my opinion. It adds not necessarily mystery, but it just explains more about the human condition in terms of where we are now and where we end up being.
Yeah.
Instead, we get a bunch of rich complaining, and I hate that.
It's funny you mentioned that in the novel they mentioned chloroform, because that's actually mentioned in the movie as well. When the Baron's criminal associate, who he owes money to, goes to his hotel room, and Baron's with the dog, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm going to try to steal those the necklace, the pearls," but the ballerina has associate with her, or the what's the organizer or whatever with her. So the guy says to the Baron, you could try using chloroform to subdue them, so then you can go steal the jewelry.
Yeah.
And he says something. I remember there's a line in it. He says something about it. Oh, I know a lot about chloroform. I had to use it during the war in World War One. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that, and something like that. So when you mentioned that, I just thought of that. That was actually in the movie, that part, but it wasn't pertaining to the disgruntled employee. It was a scene with the Baron instead.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. In terms of the novel too, by Vicky Baum, she constantly writes about veins and blood, which I thought was really disturbing after a while. She describes how many veins and the color of the veins and stuff like that. I'm like, ugh, getting kind of creeped out reading this book when those details came out.
French. Why?
No, man. I mean, just like this woman was fascinated by, I don't know what, anthropology. I don't know what the hell. I mean, but all I know about this particular book in terms of the author is that this was her biggest hit. She had some hits, but this was obviously her biggest hit.
Mhm.
And she became a noteworthy, well, I wouldn't say noteworthy, but she became a screenwriter later. She lived in Germany. She moved out of Germany because of the Nazi movement, of course, became a naturalized American citizen, and she stayed here, I believe, until her death.
That book was what, written probably in 27?
29.
29. Okay.
Yeah. The original title was Menschen im Hotel.
People in Berlin, yeah.
People in a hotel.
People in the hotel, I mean, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately, as I keep saying, I hated the book, I hated the movie, I hated the remake. I'm apathetic towards the musical, at least. I was going and thinking I would hate that, but I did not. So that's the only bright spot to this whole thing. I never ever want to hear this thing ever again in my life. I am done with Grand Hotel. Done.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie I wouldn't watch again. I won't watch again. And yes, I won't be reading the books or watching the remakes.
Don't. All right, but all in all, Canuck, how would you rate this thing?
I would probably give it a 5.5. I can't justify giving it any higher, like a 6, so I think 5.5 is what I'd settle on.
I'd give this probably a 2 because Greta Garbo and Joan Crawford are nice to look at. That is it. And maybe there was one scene where you could see the establishing shot of the hotel in the very beginning when they're on the, I don't know, 5th floor or whatever it was. Like, oh, that's a cool looking
yeah.
matte painting. That is it.
Yeah.
That is it. That's all I'm going to give this film.
I feel like I heard that they were going to do a remake at one point with the Canadian director who did what is it, In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier. I forget the director's name. He's from Canada. He was going to do a remake, I think, of this film, but it didn't happen. I think maybe it was in the 70s.
Yeah, I was going to say there was an attempt in the 70s to do a remake, but it just fell through, and that director ended up doing other things. So
that must be him. Yeah, great, very good director. He also did the Hurricane with Denzel.
I see.
I think that was his last film. But anyways, yeah, I won't watch this movie again. And yeah, definitely one of my least favorite of these Best Picture movies.
It is definitely my least favorite. I rather watch Broadway Melody again because at least there was something there to that stupid film. And
yeah, I don't know.
And
me, it's a tough one between those two. I'm not sure, to be honest.
I'm telling you right
to
now.
be completely honest,
I'd rather watch Broadway Melody.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Cimarron, I would rather watch for sure, and of course, Wings and All Quiet. I really enjoyed those movies.
Oh yeah,
I'd watch that right now, no problem.
Yeah, well, Wings and All Quiet on the Western Front so far, those are actually good films, and it's funnily enough because they're World War I films, they're war films.
Yeah.
So far, it seems to be like the war films had something going on, but that's because there's an actual conflict happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have yet to see a film that actually does not deal with war and can stand on its own 2 feet. However, it won't be the next film. Well, I haven't seen the next film yet, so who knows? But there is a film later on that does exactly that. Doesn't rely on war, relies on just pure character development, purely performances. It is amazing. I cannot wait to get to that particular film. I'm not going to mention it yet. But yeah, the next Academy Award winning picture, from what little I understand, it's based on a play. That's pretty much it. Maybe I'll read the play. And thank God, that's all I'll do.
The best winner in a few years that we're going to be getting to, that's one I really, really like. I've seen it a couple times. It had a good remake as well. Mutiny on the Bounty. I think it won in 35, I think.
You know what? I forgot to mention that same producer that I mentioned earlier, Broadway Melody, in this film.
Oh yeah, he worked on that. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I mean, when you mentioned that, I was like, I think he was on Mutiny on the Bounty.
He 100% was. I mean, give the guy some credit. I mean, sure, he made a couple of, well, not even a couple. He made a few duds and pushed those duds to prominence. But he did make legitimately good films too.
Yeah.
So give a little credit where
I have a feeling you'll like that movie too. I don't think you've seen it before, right?
Yeah, no, I saw. Well, I didn't see the original yet. That's what Clark.
You've seen the remake, I'm sure.
Yeah,
correct. The original's Clark Gable and Charles.
I only saw the remake with Marlon Brando. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm going to wait until we get to that movie. I'll explain my thoughts on that. But if anything, though, we got a few more movies to go before we start getting to the notable classics. I can't wait to get to the notable classics, and some of them have real whoppers in terms of source material. Gone with the Wind? Oh God.
Yep.
That is a 1,000-page book. What the hell is wrong with people to write this?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Have fun reading that if you're going to have fun.
I don't know if I'm gonna have fun, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Why not? I'm already balls deep in this whole affair. I might as well keep doing it, you know?
All right. Well, I guess that'll do it with this.
Yeah, guys. So Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for putting up with me. I'm one beer in, and I thought I could get all my thoughts out. I hated this movie, but you know what? This has been a fun series, and I can't wait for the next one. Hopefully, that's good. Who knows?
That's right, y'all. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Be seeing you for the next one. Take care of yourselves and peace out.